Rachel Goff taught in the New York City public schools for 16 years. She was growing increasingly disillusioned by what she was seeing unfold in the conventional classroom, and finally decided to leave and launch Creative Space Learning Center in 2021 after homeschooling her children for several years. Creative Space is a learning center for pre-K to eighth grade homeschool children in Long Beach, New York, on the South Shore of Long Island, that follows a child-led learning philosophy. Rachel Goff, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. I love your story. You reached out to me to share with me about your role in creating your learning center, and I'd love to get into kind of all of that. But let's go back to your story of how you got into public school teaching to begin with. What led you to education?
Yeah, so it's funny. Growing up, um, I was a very good student. It came very well. Like I knew what they wanted in school. It came very easily to me. And I always thought, school was great. I loved learning. And I mean, I graduated high school. I was valedictorian of my class. Always very like academically oriented. Um, but I really didn't. I always had a problem with like being controlled, I guess you would say. So as I went through school, and I graduated. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology at the honors program at the University of New Hampshire. And then I moved to Boston and I got my master's degree in education. I decided that I wanted to work with kids. I loved school. I loved learning. And I wanted to become a teacher, right? We go into it because we want to help children. So became a teacher. I actually started teaching in Boston, Massachusetts for 1 year. And then I moved to New York. And I was teaching in Brooklyn for several years and then in Queens for several years. So I became a teacher. And I was again like good at playing their game. I knew how school worked. I always felt like the connections with my students was really the most important thing that always stuck with me. Once you have a child who knows that they're cared about, that they're loved, that they're safe, you can pretty much get them, along the learning journey with you. But school kind of came in the way of that a lot of times. So at first, I kind of, I guess you'd say I was part of the problem. I was trying to help kids, for many years, and a lot of times I wasn't able to reach them for a variety of reasons. I felt like school was very dehumanizing to everybody involved. Really, there was a lot of rules that seemed like there was no reason for them. And oftentimes I was kind of like put in the middle where I'd had to enforce the rules, but my heart really wasn't in it. And I started to feel more and more unhappy with going to work each day. So I tried for a long time to just kind of get through. And I'd hear, some of the things that teachers would say to students or some of the things that would happen in the school I was working in. And it just was very disheartening, I guess, So when in 2011, my daughter was born, and I started to think about how the kids were being treated and spoken to at school. And I couldn't imagine my own child being in that situation. This is someone's child in front of you, and they deserve so much. And the system was really failing them. And even though a lot of teachers had their heart in the right place, they were failing the kids also because of the position that we're put in.
Rachel, can you talk a little
I
bit
had
more
my
about
daughter,
that?
and then my son.
About how the teachers were
Sure.
interacting?
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I was teaching in Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood in Brooklyn, and then I was teaching in Far Rockaway, Queens, and both areas were really low income. They all got free lunch. There was the population really didn't have a lot of support in the community, and the school, even though a lot of times the teachers would try and help, I would just hear the way that they were speaking to students, and oftentimes it was just hurtful, telling kids that they weren't ever going to be anything, that just very, very disrespectful. I'd see some teachers even grab children. And again, it started, once I had my own children, I just started thinking about that could be my child, like that's somebody's baby, and so I I just couldn't just keep like turning the other cheek to, seeing that. And I'm so saddened to say that at first I was kind of part of the problem. This was just kind of the culture of the school system, and I would just see it everywhere. The way that students were being spoken to, and those that were struggling, those that needed our love the most, were really just cast aside. I mean, they would enter my classroom with already a reputation. I would be told from the previous teacher, about how terrible this kid was, or that they weren't going to do anything, they weren't going to learn. And some of those students, once I had them in my classroom, were my favorites. My favorites, because once you get to know the child, they're a person just like anyone else, and they really needed that connection. And to be just automatically like shut out from the moment that they walk into a classroom, being told that they're nothing, that they're not going to learn, that they're going to end up in jail. I've heard that. I've heard children be told that. It was heartbreaking. And and then my own children entered school also. So my daughter, she always loved to learn. She was reading from like age 3. She just was everything you could put in front of her, right? Children love to learn, like naturally. And she loved it. She was, uh, interested in all kinds of learning, anything she could get her hands on. So when it came time to start school, oh, she was so excited. And she put on her uniform, and we were so excited to have her, in school and be learning. I'm laughing because like later we quickly changed our minds. But once she was in school, I started to see a change in her, because she was always very interested in learning, and it came intrinsically when she was young. But then as she entered school, it became much more about doing the right thing. She wanted to please the teacher. She wanted to be a good student, and she wanted to make the school happy. And it caused so much anxiety for her. In unstructured situations, a lot of times when the children would be given a direction and she couldn't have control over the classroom situation, she would she would kind of have like crying in class, and her teachers would send me photos during the day of her crying in the middle of class. And what am I supposed to do? I couldn't be there, and it's heartbreaking to know that my daughter, who loved learning, was in a position where she wasn't being given the support and the love, that she could be given in a different situation. So I started to see how school was affecting her as well. Um, and then when my son entered school when he was born late in the calendar year. So when he entered pre-K, he was like 3.5. He was very young. And I started to think, why are these children, this 3.5-year-old boy, why is he having to sit at a desk, and do work? He hated it. He hated going to school. He would cry when we would all end up in tears by the time it was time to leave in the morning, just getting ready. He would have like such anxiety. It was awful. He loved to learn, but he hated going to school. He also had a lot of like health problems. He had chronic health problems, a lot of allergies, and when he entered pre-K, he had a 504, a medical 504 for a one-to-one para with him at all times. So oftentimes my husband would get a call to come pick him up. They didn't monitor him very well. He would have allergic reactions. He was very young, so he oftentimes didn't control what he was like getting into, and it was scary to send him away from us and know that the school really wasn't providing the support that they were supposed to be providing for his medical safety. And so after a while, we said we can't keep doing this anymore. So in 2019, we pulled the children out to homeschool. I was still teaching in New York City, and my husband, he works at night, so he was home with them in the daytime, doing much of the homeschooling. And I guess really at first we were just trying to like replicate school at home. They've been doing an online curriculum, and I'd set them up, before the day, and then he would administer that stuff during the day, and then I'd go over it later at night. But I was still going to school, each day to teach. And as time went on, I'd be going to school every day, and it became like soul crushing, really, knowing that, I was part of this institution that really wasn't about helping kids. And I'd see it every day. So I would try in my own way to give the kids some humanity again, just thinking about some kids would show up like with a hoodie on because they were cold and wanted to wear a sweatshirt, and just to think, I was in charge of making sure that they followed the rules. They weren't allowed to have hoodies on, so I'm supposed to tell them to take it off. I remember once I had a girl who had she didn't like her haircut. You know, she had gotten a haircut the day before, and she came in with her hood up. And when she told me, I said, you know what, keep the hood on. You know, but when the principal came in, it became like a struggle for control. And in front of me, you know, in front of all of us, and this poor girl had to remove her hood to satisfy the principal that she had, you know, was officially under control, I guess. um, so things like that would just really bother me. You know, I'd go home and I'd think about how these kids were having their humanity stripped from them, to be told they couldn't go to the bathroom. You know, they couldn't wear a sweatshirt if they were cold. And, you know, the same thing with the teachers. It became kind of a battle each day for me to go to work. And just have a lot of rules that were for no reason, you know. And then I became kind of like trying to protect the children, and then I'd be getting into trouble because I let the kids chew gum or whatever it was, you know. Um, so each day it just got more and more kind of soul crushing to go to work, because as a teacher I felt dehumanized. Watching the students be dehumanized each day, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so with COVID happening, I was teaching from home for a while, and that was a little bit better because at least I was in my own space. And but once we went back to school, I had to go. You know, it's funny because I would have I started to talk to some of the teachers that I worked with about how I felt, and they're like, "Oh, we all feel this way, but you just have to suffer through it. You know, you have till you're 56, and then you can retire, and then you can do whatever you want." But like the idea of spending the next, you know, 15 years going through my life just to suffer through um, made no sense at all. I can't even, I couldn't even process that. um, so at the beginning of the school year in 2021, I left, I resigned, and I opened up my own place. Um, so it's kind of funny how it happened. Um, that summer, that previous summer, I had been because we were homeschooling our children. We knew some homeschool families locally, you know, and they were in some groups. And this woman that I knew, she was saying she was going to open up a learning center for the homeschool community, and asked me if I would teach at the center. So I was like, you know, I've been thinking about leaving the system. Like, this is a sign. Yes, I'm in. Like, I got to do it, you know. And so the last day I resigned, and I was home on Friday afternoon, and she called me and she said, so last minute, I got a job offer in Colorado, and I'm not opening the learning center. So sorry. uh, so at first I kind of freaked out. And but then I said, you know, this is a sign. This is meant to be mine. You know, like, I can do this. I know teaching. I know children. I don't know business so much yet, but I can figure it out. I can figure that part out. And so I spoke to her, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to open up the space. So I did. She had a space that she had been looking at in a church. And so I met with them and spoke to them. And then this is where we opened up.
So, Rachel, you opened in
Yeah. So in the end of
2021. Yeah.
yes, in the fall of 2021, we
And
opened.
how many students did
And
you
so
have at that time?
when we opened, I actually we had been just advertising on social media a little bit, and I had 3 families that started with us. I had my own 2 children. I know I have other teachers here today. Help me. I have my own 2 children that were with us, and then I had 3 other children that had signed up. And so we started like that. I had some materials that I had from my own teaching experience, and then I just kind of had gathered some things along the way and figured we'll start with the minimum and we'll grow as we go, you know, like kind of build the plane as we fly.
And so
So
how
we
has
did.
it
We
evolved?
opened
Yeah.
up, and we've been able to. Yeah, it's been such an amazing experience, and so as we opened and we grew a bit, you know, we really just started with advertising on Facebook, on Instagram, social media. We haven't done a lot of like advertising, and just hope that word of mouth would spread. So when we opened, I really didn't have a specific vision for creative space. I wanted it to be a place where kids had fun learning. And all I knew really was what I was taught in my teaching training. So I only knew just traditional teacher educates the children, fills them with knowledge, children learn, yay, you know. um, but I knew that that's not what I wanted for my space. I didn't want kids to feel forced into doing anything. I felt very uncomfortable about, forcing children to do things that they didn't want to do. I wanted them to have the freedom to learn and explore what they're interested in, so that they actually enjoyed learning and they look forward to it. Um, so as we started, I pretty much just took everybody that I could. And I said, whatever you want us to be, we will be. So a lot of our children, their parents sent in curriculum materials with them, and we tutor them with their math and reading activities. Um, we do math and reading activities each day, and then we also offer enrichment classes. So, we have a variety of different classes that children would participate in. Um, and at first, like I said, a lot of it was, we'll take everybody. We want, I wanted to get kids in here. So as we started like that, I started to see kids be unhappy, and it made me unhappy. We'd get through the day, and I'd be like, okay, you have to finish this because your mom wants you to get it done, and I didn't like how that felt. The kids didn't like how that felt. So I had to kind of revisit my vision for our learning space and what I wanted it to be for kids. And so that's how I started to kind of get into alternative education models. I didn't really know much about it at all. I just kind of felt my way through, like listening to my soul and what felt right for the kids. And then one day, one of our parents had told me a little bit about unschooling. And she said, you should look into unschooling a little bit. And I'd heard of unschooling, but my kids were very much homeschoolers. Like, we had just a regular curriculum that we followed. But after speaking with the parent a few times, I would kind of reflect on what I saw with my own kids with their homeschooling curriculum. And I started to see some of the same symptoms that I was seeing actually when they went to school. They had a lot of anxiety about some of the activities that they were assigned. They had, I'd be helping my son with a test in social studies or whatever, and he would be getting so frustrated, and I'm getting frustrated with him. And honestly, I didn't know the answers to these very specific questions about dates that generals fought, in a battle, in a war. And I started to question, like, why am I making him learn this? Why am I making him do this? Because after he's just doing it for compliance, right? So then afterwards, he's not really learning it. What's the point? Like, what it really is the point of all this? Uh, so I started to research more about unschooling. I read Free to Learn. Like, Peter Gray was the first book that was recommended to me, and I just took off from there. So I really have restructured how I've been homeschooling my own children, and they're so much happier without all these quizzes and tests that are assigned, and they get to actually just explore what they're interested in and spend time learning that. And they've really started to excel in art and music. My daughter spent time, she's taught herself how to play the ukulele. Both of my kids have, and some of the other children here from Creative Space have taught themselves how to play the piano. And so they're just really learning about, things that they love, and to see them, light up with excitement about coming to school each day. They don't want to leave at the end of the day because they're having so much fun. Like, that's the kind of learning space that I envision. And I'm so thankful to have grown to this. So
So,
that's how I kind of
Rachel,
found my way to alternative education.
that's so great. So, you
Yeah.
run Creative Space as a PMA, Private Membership Association Learning Center for Homeschoolers. What is the structure like? Is it full time, 5 days a week, part time? Can families kind of pick and choose? What does it look like week to week?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because we do offer a lot of options. As once we got into homeschooling, we saw that so many families who were educating at home just had their own schedules. One of the great things is the freedom to learn, freedom to learn how and what you want when you want. So we do offer a lot of different options. We do have both part-time and full-time families that come, because budget-wise, also being able to offer this to families. Um, sometimes it's not something, full time Monday to Friday. We offer 9 to 2:45 is not something that all families might be able to afford. So we want to make this something that all families can access in some way. So we offer full time, a full day for the week, or we also offer half days, either morning or afternoon sessions. Um, and families can pick anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week. So if some families start with a half a day a week for the month, and parents generally pay tuition monthly, and so that's something that a lot more families can participate in, and that way we're able to help more in our community that way. We also offer the opportunity for families just to join the enrichment classes. So if they only want to come for robotics on Mondays, then they can just come and take the class. And then we offer, only the class. They have the enrichment classes are from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon. So we do the class from 1 to 2, and then we invite the kids to stay for open play for a bit, so they get to, have social time with other kids, and they get to experience more of what we offer at our center with open play. So
And
it's
so
worked
what
out
is
really
the
well. I know families.
sorry, what is the tuition structure like for families if they wanted to do part-time or just enrichment versus the 5-day full-time option?
Yeah, so if parents just want to come for the enrichment class, we just charge $20 for the class, and then they can come a la carte pretty much. Pick which days they want to come. Families who come, we start with a half a day. One half a day per week starts at like $150 per month, which is something much more manageable. Um, and then for full time, if parents want to come, send their kids for full time Monday to Friday, 9 to 2:45, it's $1,400 for the month. So it really varies depending on which tuition package that families pick. But that way we can service a lot more children, and depending on the needs of the families and their schedules, we can really offer the best that we can. So
And how many
yeah, it
students are you
depends on what
serving
the families
now,
are looking for.
Rachel?
Currently, we have 21 children that are enrolled with us that come various times throughout the week,
That's great.
plus my own too. So
Yeah, so over 20. And how does it work? Because all of your students are recognized as homeschoolers in New York. New York has some of the strictest homeschool regulations in the country. Does that
yes.
ever feel like a challenge?
You know what? At first it did. When I first started homeschooling, even though I was an experienced teacher, all of the homeschooling paperwork, all of that seemed very overwhelming in New York. Like you said, they do have some of the strictest homeschooling regulations. Um, but once I got used to what was required, and since I've been doing this a few years with my own kids, I started to feel more comfortable with the paperwork. It became much less overwhelming, and something that I can assist our families with. So our families are all homeschooling families that they're responsible for the education of their child. They complete all of the paperwork. We're just providing a service that they can access to support their learning. But we do offer some assistance, as families have questions about filling out their quarterly reports or their individualized home instruction plans for their kids. We do offer some support with that, because I know that it can be really overwhelming, especially families that just pull their children out of the school system or just beginning their homeschooling journey, and they're really not sure where to start. So as someone who went through that experience myself as a mom, I really want to be able to offer that assistance to other parents, because I don't want that fear, that overwhelm to hinder them from seeing all that like home education really has to offer.
I love that. And so, you reached out to me because a parent had been of yours, a parent of a child in creative space, had been listening to my podcast and sort of seeing a lot of familiarity in the stories that I'd been sharing on the podcast of entrepreneurial parents and teachers just like you opening schooling alternatives and microschools and learning centers, just like creative space. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of how you discovered the podcast and what that parent was finding in the stories that she was hearing.
Yeah, it's so funny because, like I said, I didn't really know about alternative education models. But as I was experiencing our own learning center here, I thought about what I wanted children to feel like when they came here. And the most important thing was really freedom. I wanted children to feel free to have basic human rights that are often, taken from them in schools. I wanted them to be able to have the freedom to choose what they're exploring, what they're learning. And so the self-directed learning just really kind of spoke to me. Um, so when the parent, had enrolled her child and started coming here, she was telling me more about self-directed learning, and she said, you're really on point. This is exactly what you're doing. You just don't really know what it is. So that's how she recommended some reading for me to get started with, to find out more about alternative education and unschooling. And once I started digging in, I found your podcast, and I couldn't believe how time and again I would listen, and I was just out loud like, I can't believe this is could be my story. This could be creative space um, telling their story. And I had to reach out to you because this is exactly what we were doing. I just didn't know that so many others out there were doing it. Just having the children be able to explore through the day and to learn. And so much of it is just really organic. So for one day we were outside in our play space. We have our garden outside, and there were ladybugs in the spring. So we said, oh, let's go inside. We're going to learn all about ladybugs. So we read a read aloud about ladybugs. We incorporated ladybugs into math that day. We did a little science lesson that week about ladybugs. And I actually brought in some ladybug larvae that I had in the woods near my house had found. The kids got to look at them under the magnifying glasses, and we talked about organic pest management, and we put them into our gardens so that they could, take care of the other pests without using chemical pesticides. So we talked a little bit about organic gardening, and it just really came out of an organic moment. And that was, to me, that's what learning is, right? That's real life. And so that's the kind of learning that we like to discovering who they are, what they want, what their interests are, play, through their imagination, through interactions with other adults and children, has just been so magical. So as we've grown, we've changed a little bit. We do have some structure. We offer some curriculum options. We offer classes, like I said before, throughout the day. But it was really important to me that we have a non-coercive environment, because I didn't feel comfortable forcing kids to do something that they didn't want to do. I never liked being forced to do anything. As adults, we don't want to be forced. So we shouldn't be, doing that to children. So yeah, we've
Got it.
really just we've been growing and exploring more about what real life learning is. So we've been adding a lot of field trips. We've been getting out more, getting into nature, because experiential learning to me is just practical, real life learning. Because oftentimes math, reading, science, like they're all one. They're really not disconnected. So we've been getting out and exploring. We've been having family field trips, inviting families on our events, just to really help build that sense of community. Because I know oftentimes, schooling can be really isolating. That's how I felt before. Also, my kids were home learning, and they were happier than they were in school, but we didn't have that sense of community. So that's one thing that we've built here that's been so meaningful to me. We have family game nights. We've been doing family field trips. We've been doing a nature, a craft fair, a garden craft fair, with items that the kids have made, handmade and grown in the garden. And it's been really great to have that sense of community and get parents involved in our space
Right.
also.
And it's really great that you were able to hear that there were other entrepreneurial, educators like you who were kind of building similar programs. And so maybe you as an entrepreneur didn't feel so isolated either, kind of realizing that there are so many others like you across the country that are doing this. One thing you said earlier, Rachel, that struck me is you said that other teachers in the schools where you were working would sort of acknowledge the same feeling that you had, like, oh yeah, it isn't great, but let's just muddle through, reach retirement age, and then we can go off and do something that's more meaningful. And you rejected that. I wonder if, since you've launched Creative Space, What has the reaction been from your former colleagues? Do you ever hear from other, teachers who may be interested in doing something like you're doing, or what is that relationship like?
Um, I have heard from some of the teachers I used to work with. At first, when I was leaving, and I told them I was leaving, they were like, "Oh, good luck, but that's crazy. I have to just stay through it." And then I have had a few teachers reach out to me that said, "Wow, that's amazing what you're doing," and communicating that they're really pleasantly surprised that it's been so successful. But I don't know if any of them would be ready to leave the system. I don't know if they're that unhappy. uh, I don't know. I think it takes a risk. It's a big risk to leave your career, and especially when your family is depending on your income. But yeah, I just got to the point where I couldn't live my life like that. We have one life here, and it's to be lived. It's to really be lived. And I know that I have a greater purpose than to show up to a soul crushing job each day where I'm kind of made to be like a warden, like a prison warden. um, and so I had to just follow my heart, follow my purpose. And I'm hoping that, because, like I said, some teachers have reached out to me. I'm hoping that it is inspiring to other teachers who might be unhappy, and maybe not right now, they're not ready to leave, but as they continue to see us grow, as they see other examples of educational entrepreneurs who offer spaces that are better alternatives to the school building. Hoping that more teachers will be encouraged to get out there and offer better alternatives for children, because I see each day the kids come in with a smile, and I really, it melts my heart to know that the kids look forward to learning each day, because that's something that I did not see when I was in school.
So what advice would you have for any of those, current teachers listening or watching who might be thinking about making a change, but afraid, like you said, it is a risk. What do you think that they should consider or try to do between sort of quitting their job and, I guess, before where they are now to quitting their job? What are some steps they can take to get ready?
Yeah, yeah, not everybody might be ready to jump out like I did right away, but I mean, I didn't do it right away, right? So over time, I'm hoping that even working within the system, you can find moments where you can be the voice for children. That you can make the connections with children. So for so long, when I was still in the classroom, I tried to take the moments I could to just to be there for kids. To connect with them, to allow them humanity, and whether it's inside the school building or that when they are ready to leave, there are ways that you can help make it a positive difference. And so, just remembering that these children are somebody's kids. These children are people that are going to grow up to be adults in our society, and they all deserve the best. They all deserve the love that you would give to your own children. So, to find that humanity in the kids, and just let the kids know like they're so loved, and that they can really accomplish anything. And so, even though in the moment in schools they might feel defeated, they might feel dehumanized, they might not feel free, that there are so many choices in life, and you really can do anything if you put your mind to it, right? So thought but plus faith equals create. That's why I
Oh,
have
right,
on my
right.
shirt. So you can really create anything. Like once you imagine it, yeah. Once you imagine it, you envision it. If you have faith in yourself, you can really accomplish it. And I prove that to myself with opening creative space. And I've proven that to others, as they see us grow and they see all the children that we have enrolled and how happy the kids are to learn, all the wonderful experiences that the kids get to have together, memories that they build together with their families. Yeah, I'm hoping that it inspires people to connect more with each other, to just show more love, and yeah, more humanity. That's what kids deserve.
I love that. Yes, your shirt says thought plus faith equals create. And I think that that is so great
Yes.
and seems to really capture what you've built at Creative Space, but also what you're encouraging others to build and to create outside of their conventional classrooms. And I think that that's such a wonderful thing, and hopefully more and more parents and teachers are becoming inspired by people like you who are doing this and making it happen. So as we begin to wrap up, Rachel, what are your kind of hopes and dreams for the future at Creative Space and kind of in alternatives to conventional schooling more generally over the next, say, couple of years?
Yeah. So, opening creative space, I really saw it as a space where kids could get creative, right? So when they enter schools, I feel like the first thing that happens is they just start taking away that creativity that we have. And I grew up always thinking I wasn't creative. I wasn't creative. I was such a good student, but I always thought I wasn't, that the school made me feel like I wasn't creative. And so, I do see actually where we're located on Long Island, there are quite a few alternative education um, places that have opened up over the past few years for kids, but a lot of them I feel like try and replicate school. A lot of the parents, the homeschooling parents, are very traditional homeschoolers and looking for something very similar to school. Um, and so if that's what parents want, that's great. But I'm so happy to offer something that's not school, very much not school. And so I'm just excited that there are so many alternatives for people to take, if they want to take their kids out of school, if they're happy with the school system, that they do have so many options. And so hopefully, as people learn more about the different options, they'll be able to be more inspired. More places will open up. So um, that's really my advice is to just go for it. And it's great that so many people have been, I feel like the homeschooling population has really grown over the last few years after the whole pandemic situation. And so yeah, for families to be able to have options is a wonderful thing. And so if you're looking for something that's alternative to the school system, there are so many places out there. I'm trying to remember what
Great.
the other question you asked me was.
No, that's it. And I'd love to know now, Rachel, if others want to connect with you or
Oh, I
learn
know. I'm
more
sorry.
about Creative Space, what is the best way?
Sure. So sorry to answer the other question about where I see creative space. So we rent a learning space in the basement of a church in Long Beach, and we have an outdoor beautiful play space as well with a garden. But as we grow, I would really like to be able to grow our space. So as we fill, we've been filling this space here. I would like to be able to expand. We recently this year expanded to include through eighth grade through middle school ages. And then I would love to be able to, in the next couple of years, open a second location. We've had so many requests from people who want to enroll their children but don't live nearby. And so it would be great if we can open up a second location to be able to service those families that are looking for something like we offer, but who would have a really long commute. So that would help alleviate some of that. So that's the vision that I see that's happening in the next couple of years, and I'm so excited to be able to expand and to see the growth that we've had. To get in contact with us, yeah. So we just launched a new website. We're at creativespacelearning.com, and there's a whole bunch of information on there about it, some great pictures of what we offer, and an easy way to contact us. We also do have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Creative Space Learning Center. And it's also a link on our website. And you can also reach out to me through email, which is just creativespacelearning@gmail.com.
Well, best wishes, Rachel, for your continued expansion and enabling young people to thrive in a more self-directed, creative learning space. Rachel Goff, thank
Yes.
you so much
Yes.
for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you, Carrie, for having me.